Aotearoa, welcome whānau to the War on News, your weekly sacred cow slaughtering assault on current affairs, beam live from the palatial Stratus news bunker buried deep beneath the heart of the Greyland Republic. If this show was a multi-level private prison, we'd keep building it, even though the crime rate is dropping because the Department of Corrections isn't about public safety anymore, it's about private profits. Feeling safer yet? In tonight's political media crimes against reason kill zone, everyone knows that National are going to sell solid energy to the Chinese, right? South Canterbury Finance's lovable Mr. Magoo stumbles back into the headlines, confound it. 90-day right to sack and toothless climate control legislation made it a shit week to be a worker or Mother Earth. Plus this week's Sex in the Super City, Wanker of the Week, and the Barack Obama People's Hair of the Week Award. Leading the war on news this week, brothers and sisters, what's the difference between Japanese nuclear reactors and the political opposition in New Zealand? Japanese nuclear reactors know when to stop melting down. Whānau, a goddamn monkey would be a better political opposition right now. And I'm not talking about one of those smart space monkeys. I'm talking the kind of garden variety monkeys that steal things from stupid fat American tourists who can't chase very fast. Labour are in disarray. New Zealand First is really Winston First and New Zealand Second. The Greens are so weak they couldn't negotiate a sale of crack to Charlie Sheen. And the Māori Party, bypassing one of the largest land confiscations in modern political times, should be shown all the contempt they deserve. A plague on all your houses! Except Rodney Hyde's house. He gets double the amount of plague. Act gets twice the contempt. National are about to privatise the entire continental shelf of New Zealand, slash funding to domestic violence services, cripple the welfare state and dismantle government down to a small G neoliberal wet dream. If Labour have finished self-mutilating themselves, could they get back in the debate, please? Brothers and sisters, Paula Bennett in Parliament this week said that she hasn't received any advice about the impact on the people of Christchurch once her emergency benefit ends, which then led to the question, why haven't you sought any advice on what the impact of ending the emergency benefit on the people of Christchurch will be? Her response was the utterly unconvincing and detail-less, yeah, nah, we'll look after everyone. Hello, Paula. You did see that big news story about that really huge earthquake in Christchurch, eh? They aren't going to be fixed in 3 months, mate. They're pretty fucked up. And they're going to need a hell of a lot more than you are offering. And the rest of us would prefer to pay a levy on those who have benefited most from the tax cuts rather than go into more debt that should be going on other social services that we desperately need rather than more South Canterbury finance. Owned. Brothers and sisters, just when you thought it was safe to stop hiding your literature from book burners, Paul Henry is returning to Talkback Radio in New Zealand. It turns out Radio Life aren't the new voice of Talkback Radio after all, and are in fact the same old redneck talkback we've all come to know and love. The good news is that Michael Laws finally has a friend to sit with on the naughty step. Apparently the angry, white, rich male knee-jerking talk-hate radio market isn't saturated enough. Larry Williams up against Paul Henry is like rednecks in stereo. Add a ukulele in the background and we've got all the ingredients for a broadcast mass suicide. To the headlines, whānau. Everyone knows that National are going to sell solid energy to the Chinese, right? Brothers and sisters, when the government weren't accidentally releasing their energy policy, which is coal, more coal, and even more coal, they were meeting with the giant Chinese energy company Qinghao Group, who was in New Zealand looking at several billion-dollar projects across the South Island. This is happening as the government allows Solid Energy to build a massive lignite plant in Bill English's electorate, the very same lignite that Qinghao Group are currently assessing. Whānau, the government is setting us up for a privatisation of solid energy to the Chinese to dig up the dirtiest and most environmentally damaging coal. Not content to doom us to a 19th century energy policy, National would also like a country that imprisons artists to have more influence in our economy. Talking of power companies, Genesis Energy was caught using an ordinary maintenance shutdown, which gave them a temporary monopoly, to make a massive windfall profit by hiking prices up 250 times higher than the normal price. This is a state-owned enterprise which is obliged legally to act in a socially responsible manner. But seeing as the state aren't behaving in a socially responsible manner, why should the enterprises? Moving on with the headlines, whānau. Everyone's lovable South Canterbury finance Mr Magoo stumbles back into the headlines. Confound it. John Key told a meeting of disgruntled South Canterbury finance investors last week that he liked Alan Hubbard and that he did not get up in the morning trying to find people to go after. And in this, John Key is right. Waking up each morning to find people to go after is Murray McCully's job. The interesting bit is Key's admission that he was warned well in advance that South Canterbury finance would collapse, which highlights the fact that Mr Magoo should never have been covered by this government under the Retail Depositors Guarantee Scheme when they had the first opportunity to withdraw it. National decided to bail out their well-connected investor mates to the tune of $1.7 billion while cutting public services. And this week, it turns out this corporate welfare deal is going to cost us another $300 million. Whānau, why is it when it comes to charity, to politically well-connected investors, the government can't be generous enough? Yet when it comes to trailer park accommodation for Christchurch earthquake victims, the government wants to charge market rentals in a disaster zone. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. 90-day right to sack and toothless climate control legislation made it a shit week to be a worker or Mother Earth. So this week the government brought in new rules to stop unions from entering workplaces while handing bosses the right to sack anyone for anything within the first 90 days. This expansion of power by the bosses wasn't originally backed by the Minister of Labour, Kate Wilkinson, but John Key decided to give ACT, the far-right party of hypocrisy, a bone. National is allowing ACT, who wouldn't mind legalising slavery for corporate profits, to determine our labour laws, and they seem to be allowing ACT to determine our environmental policy with the signing off of an ETS that is so weak and meaningless makes the decision by the company owning Pike River Coal to not front at the inquiry because they've spent all their money look like a brave decision based on courage. The climate change law that National have passed has no mechanism to measure the 50% reduction in emissions. All it does is hand the dirtiest, filthiest polluters massive pollution subsidies until 2050. The Arctic will be ice-free before New Zealand polluters pay for the full cost of the pollution. When National weren't screwing workers and Mother Earth this week, they were screwing the rest of us by allowing the Secret Intelligence Service to hold their requests for more powers in secret. These are additional powers above and beyond the search and surveillance powers that the state will give every government department to spy on us without warrants. Whānau, I know that bullshit stories inspired by right-wing bloggers with deep links to National about Phil Goff getting rolled are all terribly, terribly exciting. But when the mainstream media have finished doing the bidding of the government spin doctors, could any of them take some time out to examine the vast expansion of police powers that are being pushed through with as little debate as possible? Whānau, are you feeling sexy? It's Sex on the Super City time! Brothers and sisters, why are we spending billions on pointless motorways in Auckland so cabinet ministers can get to their batches faster when public transport use is soaring? Last week, we saw figures showing a massive leap in the amount of Aucklanders using public transport right when the government are resisting anything that doesn't involve trucks and more roads. Only 8% of Aucklanders commute, and that's because for decades, Wellington has deprived Auckland of the funds to upgrade our mass transit infrastructure, meaning cattle trucks to abattoirs are more comfortable than most public transport in Auckland. If we want to get Aucklanders out of their cars, we have to provide better and more reliable services. The government dry humping the leg of the trucking industry is not a response to Auckland's infrastructure needs. Whānau, let's hand out this week's Wanker of the Week award. Brothers and sisters, this week's Wanker of the Week has to go to the Fox News-esque bias the corporate media have displayed towards the national government of late. Last week, footage of John Key's release making jokes at the Shire Volk of New Zealand over the purchase of 34 luxury BMWs. That's not mentioned once in favour of two stories about two different rivals for Phil's job in the same newspaper. The New Zealand Herald asking right-wing bloggers about the Labour Party leadership is like asking Gaddafi how the war in Libya is going. Why don't they just get the National Party to write the stories for the Weekend Herald to save time? The very next day, the Herald on Sunday despicably insinuated that David Parker, the MP they've spent the previous day building up as a possible pretender to the throne, is stealing the wife away from a beloved musical stroke victim. So, how does one go beyond the sickening bias of the New Zealand Herald showed last weekend? How about a journalist who blames the sources he so lazily indulges upon to attack Phil Goff? That's right, Patrick Gower over at MediaWorks, who were given a $43 million lifeline from the national government, has the audacity to attack Phil Goff because Gower claims the two sources that Gower and the rest of the underfunded journalist pool in New Zealand rely on for story ideas set the Judith Tizard T-bomb story into the political agenda, and shame on Phil for being spooked. Note, whānau, it's Phil's fault for whale oil and Kiwi blogs ravings, not the media's fault for promoting whale oil and Kiwi blogs ravings. In this rare case, you have every right to shoot the messenger. Gower is like a lung cancer patient blaming the smokes while he lights up another fag. The reason Judith wasn't wanted back is not because whale oil and that clown David Farrar said so. She wasn't welcomed back because it would have been a waste of resources and time when a much better candidate, Louisa Wall, was ready and willing. The backers of the corporate media are the exact same corporate backers of the National Party. Why even bother invoicing Crosby and Textor when the media are literally writing National's press releases for them? Could the vast right-wing conspiracy please make their corporate media lackeys look less obvious? That you aren't even pretending anymore makes us all feel cheap. Listening to so many right-wingers shed crocodile tears about the political integrity of MMP party lists to justify Judith returning is like listening to NATO apologise for bombing Afghan civilians. More annoyed than sincere. Which is the same unconvincing tone of listening to the mainstream media whine and bitch about the power two far-right bloggers hold over them while they still carry out the agenda of those two far-right bloggers. Let's end the show by handing out this week's Barack Obama People's Hero of the Week award. Brothers and sisters, this week's Barack Obama People's Hero of the Week award has to go to the world's second largest company, General Electric, who last year made profits of $14.2 billion. How much tax did they pay? None. They actually got a $3.2 billion rebate thanks to the evil army of Jedi accountants of the Sith. The power of American corporations to push their own agendas should not be expanded. But that's exactly what John Kerry is going to do by signing the American Free Trade Deal, which he has pretended will earn us billions, yet our negotiators have been caught out by WikiLeaks, privately complaining that New Zealand got nothing out of the free trade deal, and trying to sell it to the New Zealand public would be hard. Other than making medicines more expensive, stopping local TV content, weaker controls on overseas investment, weaker regulation of financial services, and undermining action on climate change, the free trade deal with America that Kerry is quietly trying to sign will also open New Zealand up to American corporations being able to sue us for millions in offshore tribunals. Why would we want to expose ourselves willingly to American corporations being able to bully our government into doing whatever they want? This Washington consensus isn't consensual. John Kerry is slipping the country a roofie and asking us to relax for the economic equivalent of a date rape. That's it for tonight, folks. Don't forget Citizen A plays Friday 7:30 PM, Freeview 21 and Sky 89. Follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter account and Citizen Bomber Facebook site. It has all the shows posted up online and allows you to befriend other like-minded citizens for romantic news moments. Good night, New Zealand. You stay classy out there, Righto.